So I have a bunch of little scraps of paper. Please come over so you can see right here. You gotta be able to see the table. So I have all these little scraps of canvas so that you can just practice the eye. Because I think really it's one of the hardest parts. It helps you mix your colors and it kind of gives you the idea. So today, you're going to practice, take your picture, and I know this isn't the one I'm going to use for my final, but this was the one I did last time I taught this project. And you're going to look at the eye and the things around it. Now you also need to take a look at your color studies so you know what colors you're going to do. So for this one, I made my triadic color scheme. It's a tertiary triadic, so I know I'm going to use these colors. So you want to start with looking at the eye, and I know for the eye we're doing pretty much these colors, but you also need to know the fur around it just to give you a little bit of an idea. So these are my samples from before. I know I wanted the fur right around his eye to be sort of an orangey color because he's going to be mostly this orange as I start to draw him. So I have my value study, so I know where my lights and darks are. You just have a little one, that'll work. And then I have my color scheme. So your job, and I'm going to give you another piece of canvas too, is to actually mix the colors in your color scheme and do your eye between today and tomorrow. So I also did some tints of my color scheme so that I have some idea of how these are going to work together. You can do either one first. It's up to you. Because the eye is going to be pretty close to the right colors, and then just the fur around it will be different. So that's how it kind of switches up. So I've got all those things. I know I want to mix basically a black, and I'm not giving you black, right? But if you have complementary colors for your darks, or maybe I'm going to use my dark purple for that, so I can kind of go through the colors that I have. I'm going to set up my palette. Don't need a ton, because I'm just doing little bits at this point. Let's see. Where's the red? This one. So, and you can use those color charts over there to kind of give you an idea to start if you're not sure which colors you want to mix to start. I think I'm going to need probably both yellows and I want both reds. I know that for my dark purplish, I'm going to be using the ultramarine blue. So for this, it's not a bad idea just to set up your whole palette, and then you have everything you need. So I'm going to put white. I have cerulean blue. I'm going to go warm, cool, as I said. Oh, is that ultramarine? It is. I almost did two ultramarines. I don't know why this tube has it's not really accurate on the outside. So I have my warm blue, cerulean, my cool blue, ultramarine, my warm red, cadmium, my cool red is alizarin crimson, my cool yellow is cadmium yellow light, and my warm yellow is yellow ochre. So I've got all those. And I'm going to start with getting this really dark black color. What do you got on the table? Which is going to be my blue violet. So I'm going to start with ultramarine, and I'm going to add a little bit of the alizarin crimson. I want it to be a really cool violet color. Now, violet's a little hard to get because it gets dark really fast, which is perfect for my eye. So it's going to give me that black. Take a little extra off, and I think that'll be enough. That'll work. And if I kind of look at the white on the palette, I can see I'm getting a bluish violet. So I have this. Now for this part of his eye, it's kind of orangey, so I'm going to start with my cadmium. And get that one. But it's pretty warm, so let's see. Which yellow do I want? No, I'm going with this one. I have a warm from my cadmium red, because that's a warm red. And then I'll use the other one. That is too much red. What did I do wrong?
You started with your dark.
Yes, I started with my dark. I want to start with my light. So let's get a little water in there. These paints are getting a little bit goopy. So I have this is going to be the orange of his eye. And I can change the color, but not the what? Value, perfect. So I still need this one to be light and that one to be dark. So I change this color, I have this, and then looking around his eye, there is still, because I'm going pretty accurate, there is still some of this light gray color. So to get that light gray, I'm going to take some of my dark blue that I have for the center of his eye, just a touch, and I'm going to add white to it to get the gray. And you can do it in the little divots, you can do it in here, that's up to you. But I'm going to use this as my light gray around his eye. So I've got my darks, but because I'm doing this part all together, I like to mix and let things sit. I also have for you a couple new things to try out. This is a pretty fluid. It's called a slow drying fluid or a slow dry fluid retarder. And the idea is that it makes things dry a little slower. So if you know you're going to work with this for a while, a day or two, and you want to come back to it, you can put just a drop of this in it and it'll help it dry a little slower. I haven't tried this yet. I'm going to experiment with it. But I also have like a little, it's like a gel, slow dried gel, and that I've tried, it works really well. So I'm going to play with this one and let you know. But if you know you want to keep this color for a few days, it's a nice thing to use so you can kind of keep going with that one. I'm going to put this in here so I have a light to start with. So as I look at this, I need a little more white there. There. All right, so I've got a few colors to work with. Clean my palette knife so I can come back to it. And I'm going to start with, which one do I want to start with? I'm going to draw it out, actually. That would make it easier for me. So, I see I have this little circle here for the inside of the eye. Then I have the outside where it's lighter. And his eyelid, I'm doing this side, kind of comes across it a little bit. And then it's dark here. The fur comes this way. And as you're doing the dog, we'll talk more about this when we do your final animal, as I demo that one. But as I do that, I'm not going to worry about the white spots, the glare yet, because that is going to go on top. But I want to pay attention to the direction of the fur around the eye. And really anywhere as I'm working with him, because that's going to help him look more realistic. If you use the direction and length of the fur, that's going to work. So I'm going to start with my little guy here. And I'm going to start with the lighter color because it's easier to cover that up with the darker color. So I'm going to put that one in, kind of lay that down. A little blob out of there. And the outside edge is pretty set. So I'll come around. Who remembers? How do I get a nice clean edge? What do I need to do with my paint? Silence. Anybody? If I have real thick paint, can I get a nice edge? No, I can't. So what do I add to it to make it not so thick?
Water.
Water, thank you very much. But do I add so much water I get transparent colors? No, I want nice opaque colors. Acrylic paints are meant to be opaque. And these Liquitex tubes are nice because they go nice and thick right away. Or they get opaque right away. So I come up to this edge. I'm setting my hand on the table to get that nice clean edge. Remember how I swoop in and get a nice edge? And then kind of fill in the rest. I don't dab at the edge, but I make a smooth, clean line. And then I am going to kind of dab as I come in here. I want to blend it with the inside of his eye. So here, I want to overlap a little bit where the dark is going to start so that I can blend it. And then I'm going to take just a touch of water and my black, or like super dark purple. Need a little more water so that spreads nicely. And I'm going to fill this in. I'm going to make it nice and opaque in the middle. Boy, this got thick. And once I get toward the edge, and I like to turn my paper sometimes so that I can kind of keep my hand the way I want. Now, after I fill in the middle, I'm going to get a good amount of paint on the brush and then smooth it out around the edges so that as it overlaps, I can control that, oops, that change. And then, keep that opaque, get a little bit off the brush, so my brush is pretty clean, and then I'm going to go over that edge. And do you see how that blends it with a clean brush? Because I only want to blend in a really small space. I want it to blend, but not be like overwhelming. I don't have a whole lot of room to blend. So that way I can blend that color out as I get to that edge. Now I'm going to use that same dark right around here, but now I want that edge to sit. So I'm going to come up to it, draw that in, draw on this edge. I got lots of nice paint on my brush. And then I start to move away from that. So because we're doing animals, the brush stroke is going to make a difference because it'll make it look like fur or not look like fur. So I come up here, I get this dark, I get this. And I want to work things up, especially with this little part, as a whole, which means I'm going to move around and put some of these darks in all these different spots while it's still wet. This is why I like the slow dry stuff, because then I can come back to it if I'm not going to. And it's going to dry on your painting. That you can't help because it's acrylic. That's how acrylic works. If you don't want it to dry, you got to use oil. So if you take painting 2, you'll get to learn to make oil paintings. So I get these sort of darkest values right around the eye in there. Got his little eyebrow up here. It's just like it needs to be a little bit bigger, a little thicker. This is pretty dark here. Looks like it's dark here too. It's not spreading, so I get just a touch of water on my brush, not much. And now I'm getting lighter, so maybe I'll come in here and say, all right, this is where the fur is lighter, kind of blend this in. It's a little lighter in here. And then bring this in. And I've decided, as I did my value study and my color studies, that I want the lightest parts to be the yellowy, or the orangey, red-orange, I should say. So, let's see. This has got to kind of blend into there. Where the little eyebrow goes. And the nice thing about an animal and their fur is like, if a little bit of the fur is a different color, do you necessarily look at that and go, that little chunk of fur should be a little bit darker? I mean, if it's a whole big chunk, you might notice. But if it's just a little chunk, you're not going to notice. So you have a little bit of leeway to kind of play with it a little bit. It's less stressful, right? This is still dark. This comes around. This blends in. I have this direction this way. And then maybe I'll get this light value in here where it's really light, kind of up here around his eye, and start to blend that in. So I get that movement. This is real light in here. That's more of the gray. Again, I like to set my edge. Fill this in. And I don't mind if my colors kind of blend together, if I don't clean my brush necessarily each time right now, because I want the fur to blend together. So I'm also noticing there is a shadow on his eyeball right here. Like it does kind of darken as it tucks under his skin. So now I'm going to take the white off my brush, and I'm going to go into this edge and get a little bit there. So on the eyes, you want to get a good amount of detail in there correctly, because that'll make it look more realistic. And I'm going to blend that. So clean my brush. And notice how often I'm looking at my picture. I'm spending just as much, if not more time, looking at my image as a reference than I am at my painting, because I want it to look like my reference. So it's lighter here, but there is a darker edge. So I'm going to get this darker edge in here. And then this edge kind of comes out here. So I should put this in this way so you can see. So this is lighter, and I blend it, and then as I put this in here, there, so there's sort of like that membrane that comes in light, and then here's the darker parts around it, and then I'll start to work my way out from the eye. So this is dark, this is dark. But I continue to work back and forth. I need a good amount of water in my brush to get that brush stroke, and I bring this in this way. Now the last thing I'm going to do is the white in the eye. It's not a bad idea to let that dry so the white doesn't change it too much, but I want to make sure I get just a dab of the white, and it's on the tip of my brush. And acrylic, the nice thing about acrylic is it dries super fast, so I can just kind of get in here and get a good amount on my brush. And then he's got this little tiny dot, and you want to notice where the dot is in the eye, because if you make it off a little bit, it can kind of look like they're a little cross-eyed. So notice like his kind of leaning toward the center a little bit, and then there's this little dot right here. And I don't want to blend too much. I want to sort of get that white on there and be done, because I don't want it to become the other color. So I need enough on my brush that it's going to make the white and then leave it. So when I'm done, I should see, it needs another little shadow around here. Get this brown in here too, that little curve. If it's too solid, sometimes it looks like a little freaky. So get the shadow in the eye, it's going to make it look more round. So then as I'm done, I do more of the real colors of his eye. Does that make sense? Questions about that? So your job between today and tomorrow is to paint an eye and choose your colors, paint your colors, and add a tint of each one. And I'll give you cards for this, and I'll give you cards for this. Questions? Thank you all. Have fun. Thank you all.